The espresso machine hissed and sputtered, sending up a plume of steam that carried the bittersweet scent of over-extracted coffee into my face. I winced, adjusting the portafilter with hands that had grown calloused from 2 years of this routine. The morning rush at Brewhaven was always chaos. A steady stream of Seattle professionals demanding their oat milk lattes and cold brews, with the urgency of people whose entire day hinged on the precise ratio of caffeine to consciousness. My lower back ached. A dull throb that had become so familiar I barely registered it anymore. Standing for 8-hour shifts, bending to retrieve supplies from lower shelves, carrying trays of dirty mugs to the dishwasher. It was all so different from the life I'd left behind. The life where I'd had people to do these things for me, where my biggest concern had been which designer dress to wear, to which charity gala. I pushed those thoughts away, focusing instead on the milk I was steaming. The thermometer climbed, 140, 150, 160 degrees. Perfect. I poured it over the espresso shots, creating a passable heart design in the foam. Not Instagram-worthy, but good enough for the impatient lawyer waiting at the counter. "Grande oat milk latte," I called out, sliding the cup across the polished wood. Through the large front windows, I could see the typical Seattle morning. Gray clouds threatening rain, people hurrying past in their North Face jackets and sensible boots, the Space Needle visible in the distance like a silent sentinel watching over the city. This had become my world. Small, contained, safe. The door chimed, and I glanced up automatically, my well-practiced smile already forming. Then my heart stopped. Carter Russo stood in the doorway. He was exactly as I remembered, yet somehow more. Taller than the other customers, broader in the shoulders, with that same commanding presence that made everyone in the room unconsciously shift their attention toward him. His dark hair was shorter than he'd worn it before, styled with that casual precision that screamed money. The charcoal suit he wore probably cost more than I made in 6 months, tailored so perfectly it moved with him like a second skin. But it was his eyes that froze me in place. Those ice blue eyes that I'd seen both tender with desire and cold with fury. Right now, they were fixed on me with an intensity that made my knees weak. Time collapsed. 2 years of carefully constructed distance, of running, of hiding, of building a new life. All of it crumbled in the space between one breath and the next. Clara. My name on his lips was like a key, turning in a lock I'd thought I'd thrown away. Deep, controlled, with that slight Italian inflection he'd inherited from his father that made every word sound like a caress or a threat, depending on his mood. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. Behind me, I heard the sound I'd been dreading. High-pitched laughter from the back room where my coworker Jenna was watching the twins during my shift. Caleb and Cody, playing with the toy cars I'd brought from home. My babies. Our babies. Carter's gaze flickered past me toward that sound, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. A recognition. A confirmation. "Clara, you okay?" Jenna appeared at my elbow, her perky voice cutting through my paralysis. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I found my voice, though it came out rough, strangled. "I need to take my break." "But you just started your—" "Now." The word came out sharper than I intended. I stripped off my apron, my hands shaking so badly I could barely manage the ties. "Please, just cover for me." Without waiting for her response, I turned and fled toward the back room, my sensible non-slip shoes squeaking on the tile floor. I could feel Carter's eyes on my back, burning through the thin fabric of my Brewhaven t-shirt. He didn't call out, didn't follow immediately. That was somehow worse. It meant he was certain. He knew I had nowhere to run. The back room was small and cluttered, boxes of coffee beans stacked against one wall, supplies on metal shelving, and in the corner, the small play area I'd convinced the owner to let me set up. Caleb and Cody looked up as I entered, their identical faces, Carter's face with my eyes, lighting up with recognition. "Mama!" Caleb scrambled to his feet, abandoning his fire truck. "Hey, sweetheart." I crouched down, pulling both boys into a fierce hug, breathing in the familiar scent of their strawberry shampoo and the faint smell of the maple syrup from their breakfast. They were warm and solid and real, and for a moment, I let myself believe that I could protect them from what was coming. Clara. I didn't need to turn around to know Carter had followed me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, the air growing heavier with his presence. Jenna stood uncertainly in the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. Should I? Leave us. Carter's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority, not a request, a command. To her credit, Jenna hesitated, looking to me for confirmation. I nodded, unable to form words. She backed out, pulling the door closed behind her, though I had no illusions that she wouldn't be pressed against it, trying to hear every word. Slowly, keeping the twins between us like a shield, I stood and faced my husband. 2 years. 2 years since I'd seen him. 2 years since that night when I'd packed a single bag and fled into the darkness while he was dealing with business downtown. 2 years since I'd chosen my safety and my baby's future over the gilded cage of being Mrs. Carter Russo. He looked older, not in a bad way. If anything, the faint lines around his eyes and the slight silver threading through his dark hair only made him more devastating. But there was something harder about him now, a sharpness to his features that hadn't been there before. Like whatever softness he'd shown me had been burned away, leaving only the core of steel beneath. These are my sons. Not a question. A statement of fact, as though he'd known all along. And maybe he had. Caleb, always the braver of the twins, peered around my leg at this stranger. "Who are you?" Carter's expression softened imperceptibly. He crouched down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. "I'm an old friend of your mother's. My name is Carter." "That's my name too," Caleb said proudly. "Well, half of it. I'm Caleb Carter Mitchell." I watched the realization hit him. I'd given them his name. Not as their surname. I'd kept my maiden name for them, a small act of defiance, but as their middle names. Caleb Carter and Cody Carter. A piece of their father that I couldn't quite bring myself to deny them, even as I'd denied them his presence. Something flickered in Carter's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or anger. With him, it was always hard to tell. His emotions ran deep and controlled, like fault lines beneath a calm surface. "How did you find me?" My voice was steadier than I felt. I was careful, so careful. "You were." He straightened, his full attention shifting back to me. "You covered your tracks well, Clara. New city, new identity, cash-only jobs, no credit cards, no social media, no contact with anyone from your old life. You even changed your appearance." His gaze traveled over me, cataloging the differences. My hair was shorter now, darker, without the honey highlights I used to maintain. No makeup, no manicured nails, no expensive clothes. Just me, stripped down to essentials. "It took me 18 months to find you," he continued, his voice conversational, as though discussing the weather. "Another 6 to confirm it was really you and not just someone who looked like you. And then I waited." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "You've known where I was for 6 months?" 7, actually. I've been watching you, Clara, learning your routines. Your coffee shop opens at 6. You arrive at 5:45 to prep. You work 8-hour shifts, 5 days a week. The boys stay with your coworker Jenna in the back, and you visit them every chance you get. On Sundays, you take them to the park 3 blocks from your apartment, that little one with the blue playground equipment. You read to them before bed every night. Their favorite book is Goodnight Moon. Horror crept up my spine like ice water. He knew everything. Every detail of the life I'd built, the sanctuary I'd created for my children, and he'd been watching all along, a predator observing his prey from the shadows. Why wait? I managed to ask, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Because I needed to be sure of something first. He took a step closer, and I instinctively pulled the twins tighter against me. He noticed, and something like hurt flashed across his face before disappearing behind his mask of control. I needed to be certain that this was what you wanted, that you hadn't just run in panic, that given time and space, you wouldn't come back on your own. I left for a reason, Carter. I know. His voice dropped lower, more intimate despite the distance between us. I know what you saw that night, Clara. I know what sent you running. And I know that I can't change the past or erase what I am. But I can change the future. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've spent 2 years rebuilding my empire, restructuring everything. The businesses that concerned you, they're gone. Divested, sold off, absorbed by others. I've gone legitimate, Clara. Every penny I make now is clean. I did it for you. For them. He gestured toward the twins, who were watching this exchange with wide, curious eyes. I wanted to believe him. God, how desperately I wanted to believe that the man I'd fallen in love with, the man who'd been gentle with me, who'd made me laugh, who'd held me like I was something precious, could somehow separate himself from the monster I'd discovered him to be. But I'd learned the hard way that Carter Russo's promises came with invisible strings attached. Even if that's true, I said carefully, it doesn't change anything. I've made a life here. The boys are happy. Safe. Safe. He repeated the word like it tasted bitter. You think you're safe, Clara? Do you have any idea how vulnerable you've been? This neighborhood, your apartment building with its broken security door, the route you walk every day to work, you've created the illusion of safety, but that's all it is. An illusion. I'm safer than I was with you. The words hung between us like a blade. Carter's jaw tightened, the only outward sign of emotion. That's where you're wrong. You were never in danger from me, Clara. But the world I lived in, the enemies I had, yes, there was danger there, which is precisely why I changed everything. For you. For our family. We're not your family anymore. Yes, you are. He moved then, closing the distance between us in 2 long strides. I pressed back against the wall, the twins squeaking in protest at being squeezed too tightly. Carter's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You can change your name, your hair, your city. You can run to the ends of the earth, but you'll always be mine, Clara. You became mine the day you said I do. And nothing, not time, not distance, not fear, changes that fundamental truth. I should have pulled away, should have slapped his hand aside, told him to leave, threatened to call the police. But the warmth of his palm against my cheek, the familiar scent of his cologne, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me, it all crashed over me like a wave, dragging me back to a time when I'd believed our love could conquer anything. Please, I whispered. Just let us go. No. The word was soft but absolute. I let you go once, Clara, because I didn't understand what I was losing. I won't make that mistake twice. You and our sons are coming home with me. This is our home. This... He glanced around the cramped back room with barely concealed disdain. Is a cage you've built for yourself out of fear. I'm offering you freedom. Real freedom. Everything you could want for our boys. Security, education, opportunities. And what's the price? His smile was slow, predatory, beautiful. You know the price, Clara. It's the same as it's always been. You give yourself to me, completely, without reservation. And in return, I give you the world. The apartment Carter had arranged for us was nothing like the cramped studio I'd been calling home for 2 years. It occupied the entire top floor of a building in one of Seattle's most exclusive neighborhoods, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond. The furniture was expensive but not ostentatious. Cream leather sofas, a dining table that could seat 12, a kitchen with appliances I didn't know how to operate. It had been 3 days since Carter had walked into Brewhaven and shattered my carefully constructed life. 3 days since he'd made his ultimatum clear: come willingly, or watch him dismantle everything I'd built piece by piece until I had no choice. He'd already spoken to my landlord, paid off the remaining 6 months on my lease, already transferred money into an account in my name, more money than I'd seen in 2 years. Already enrolled Caleb and Cody in a prestigious preschool that had a 2-year waiting list. "Mama, look!" Caleb's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He stood at the window, pressing his small hands against the glass. "I can see boats." Cody joined him, the twins pointing excitedly at the ferries crossing the Sound. They'd adapted to this new reality with the resilience only children possessed. To them, this was an adventure, a big new house with more rooms than they could count, toys appearing as if by magic, and the mysterious man who claimed to be my old friend, but looked at them with an intensity that suggested something far deeper. Carter had been surprisingly patient with them. He'd spent hours yesterday on the floor of their new bedroom, a space larger than our entire previous apartment, decorated in shades of blue with bunk beds shaped like race cars, building an elaborate train track system with Cody, while Caleb explained the intricate rules of a game he'd invented, involving dinosaurs and superheroes. I'd watched from the doorway, my heart doing complicated things in my chest, as I witnessed the father my sons had never known, carefully, tenderly, beginning to know them. But patience with the boys didn't extend to me. "Mrs. Russo." The voice came from behind me, formal and female. I turned to find a woman in her late 50s, impeccably dressed in a gray suit, her silver hair pulled back in a flawless chignon. "I'm Margaret Chen, Mr. Russo's personal assistant. He asked me to brief you on today's schedule." I bit back the urge to correct her. I wasn't Mrs. Russo anymore, had never legally changed back to my maiden name, but certainly didn't use his, and simply nodded. "The boys have their first day at Ashwood Academy at 9. A driver will take them and remain on site for the duration. You have an appointment at 11 with Dr. Sarah Morrison, an obstetrician Mr. Russo has retained to perform a comprehensive health assessment. At 2, you have a meeting with Mr. Russo's legal team regarding the boys' documentation. And at 6, Mr. Russo requests your presence for dinner at his residence downtown." Each item on the list felt like a chain being wrapped around me, link by careful link. And if I don't want to do any of those things? Margaret's expression didn't change. "Mr. Russo anticipated you might say that. He asked me to remind you that cooperation makes this transition easier for everyone, especially the children. He also wanted me to assure you that all appointments are optional, though he hopes you'll understand they're in the boys' best interest." Optional. The word was a courtesy, nothing more. We both knew it. "Where is Carter now?" "Mr. Russo had business to attend to downtown. He'll return this evening." After Margaret left, I walked through the apartment, cataloging all the ways Carter had infiltrated my life in just 72 hours. The closet in the master bedroom, the room I hadn't slept in, preferring the guest room despite its smaller size, was filled with clothes in my exact size. Not the practical jeans and t-shirts I'd grown accustomed to, but designer pieces, silk blouses, tailored trousers, cashmere sweaters in jewel tones. In the bathroom, expensive skincare products lined the counter, the same brands I'd used during our marriage. He'd recreated my old life, or his version of it. A gilded cage with better bars. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know you're angry. Meet me for lunch tomorrow. We need to talk. Jay. My breath caught. Jenna. Somehow she'd gotten my new number. The thought that there was still someone from my constructed life, someone who knew me as Clara Mitchell the barista and not Clara Russo the mob wife, made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. I was typing a response when another text came through, this one from a number I recognized. Carter. The boys look happy in their new room. You've done well with them, Clara. They're smart, funny, brave. Everything I could have hoped for in my sons. I'm sorry I missed their first 2 years. I won't miss another day. Then, a moment later, wear the blue dress tonight, the one in the closet. It matches your eyes. I should have been furious at his presumption. Instead, I felt a traitorous flutter in my stomach. He remembered. After everything, after 2 years, he remembered that blue was my color, that I loved things that matched my eyes. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. The boys' first day at Ashwood was a success. They came home chattering about their new friends and the indoor playground and the art room with 1,000,000 crayons. The doctor's appointment confirmed what I already knew. I was healthy, if underweight, and showing signs of stress. The legal meeting was more complicated. Given that Mr. Russo is listed as the father on both birth certificates, and Mrs. Russo, the lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Parks, paused at my wince but continued. Did not file for divorce. The children are legally his heirs. However, there are some custody arrangements we should formalize. Custody arrangements? My hands clenched in my lap. I'm their mother. Of course, no one is disputing that. But Mr. Russo has rights as well, and given the unusual circumstances of the past 2 years, we want to ensure everything is documented properly. For your protection as much as his. For my protection. Another careful phrase masking the truth. Carter was establishing legal claim to our children, building a framework that would make it nearly impossible for me to run again. By the time 6 o'clock approached, I was exhausted and on edge. I'd left the boys with the nanny Carter had hired, another decision made without my input, though I had to admit Maria was wonderful with them, a warm Mexican grandmother who spoke to them in both English and Spanish and had already taught them a new song. The blue dress fit perfectly, of course. It was simpler than the things I'd worn during our marriage, knee-length and elegant without being showy. But the silk moved like water, and the color did exactly what Carter had said. Made my eyes look impossibly blue against my darker hair. His residence downtown turned out to be a penthouse in one of Seattle's most iconic buildings. The private elevator opened directly into the apartment, and I stepped out into a space that took my breath away. The entire western wall was glass, offering an unobstructed view of the Sound and the mountains beyond, now painted in shades of pink and gold by the setting sun. Carter stood at that window, his back to me, a crystal glass of what looked like whiskey in his hand. He'd changed from whatever he'd worn during the day, into dark slacks and a white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal his forearms. The sight of him, silhouetted against that spectacular view, made something in my chest tighten painfully. You came. He turned, and the look in his eyes as they traveled over me made heat pool in my stomach. And you wore the dress. You didn't leave me much choice on either count. There's always a choice, Clara. He set down his glass and moved toward me with that predatory grace I remembered too well. You could have refused. You could have called the police, told them I was harassing you. You could have hired a lawyer and filed for divorce, fought me for custody. But you didn't. You're here, in that dress, because some part of you wants to be. I'm here because you've backed me into a corner. That's not the same as wanting it. Isn't it? He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne, that same woodsy scent that used to cling to my skin after he held me. You've always been a terrible liar, Clara. Your tells are the same as they were 2 years ago, When you're angry, you clench your left hand. When you're scared, you bite your lower lip. And when you want something you think you shouldn't, you look away. His finger touched my chin, gently tilting my face up. You're looking away right now. I forced myself to meet his gaze. Don't do this, Carter. Don't pretend this is about what I want. You've orchestrated everything, controlled every aspect of these past 3 days. To keep you from running again. His voice was quiet but intense. Yes, I've been controlling. I've anticipated your moves, cut off your escape routes, made it difficult for you to simply disappear with my sons. I won't apologize for that, Clara. You left me once, and it nearly destroyed me. I won't give you the opportunity to do it again. You don't own me. No. His thumb traced my jawline. But I love you. I've loved you since the day your brother brought you to that meeting, terrified and trying to be brave, offering yourself to save his worthless life. I loved you when you walked down the aisle toward me, when you slept beside me every night, when you carried my children. And I loved you through every day of the 2 years you were gone, even when I didn't know where you were, even when I wondered if you were alive or dead. That love doesn't grant me ownership, Clara, but it does mean I'll fight for you with everything I have. The words should have made me angry. Instead, they cracked something open inside me, letting out the loneliness and fear and desperate longing I'd been suppressing for 2 years. You don't understand, I whispered. What I saw that night, a man being beaten because he betrayed me, put my entire organization at risk. Carter's voice was steady. Yes, I remember. And I remember the look on your face when you saw it. The horror, the realization that the man you'd married was capable of violence. But Clara, that man is gone. The organizations that required that kind of enforcement, they don't exist anymore. I've spent 2 years dismantling an empire built on fear and rebuilding it on something better. I did it for you. How can I believe that? Because I'll prove it to you. He stepped back, giving me space. Every day, for as long as it takes, I'll show you that I've changed, that the life I'm offering you and our sons is safe, clean, good. And if I can't accept it, if I can't forgive what you were, pain flashed across his face, then I'll let you go. The words cost him. I could see it. When our sons turn 18, if you still want your freedom, I'll give it to you. But until then, they deserve to know their father, and you deserve to see who I've become. The deal was both generous and terrifying. 18 years, a lifetime sentence or a second chance, depending on how I chose to see it. Mama's here. Cody's voice carried from somewhere deeper in the penthouse, followed by the sound of running feet. The twins appeared, Maria trailing behind with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, Mr. Russo. They heard the elevator. It's fine, Maria. Carter's entire demeanor changed as he crouched down to greet the boys. Did you two have dinner? Maria made tacos, Caleb announced. And they were even better than Mama's. I would have protested, but Carter caught my eye, and the warmth there, the genuine joy at seeing our children, made the words die in my throat. This was what I'd wanted for them, wasn't it? A father who loved them, who would protect them, who would give them everything. The question was whether I could trust him not to become the monster I'd run from, or whether that monster had ever really existed at all. The memory came to me at 3 a.m, jolting me awake in the unfamiliar bed of the guest room. I'd been dreaming of our wedding night, of how Carter had carried me over the threshold of the penthouse, a different one, in New York, before he'd followed me to Seattle, and set me down with such tenderness, it had made me cry. Why are you crying, Bellissima? He'd asked, wiping away my tears with his thumbs. Having regrets already? No. I'd laughed through the tears. I'm crying because I'm happy, because I never thought I'd have this. A real wedding. A husband who looks at me like I'm something precious. My brother was supposed to pay his debt with my freedom, but instead I got you. He'd kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. You saved his worthless life, Clara. The least I could do was give you mine in return. That version of Carter, the one who'd been gentle and patient during our engagement, who'd waited until our wedding night, despite my awkward attempts at seduction, who'd held me afterward and promised to always keep me safe, felt like a stranger now. Or perhaps the stranger was the man I'd seen that night 6 months into our marriage, standing over a bloodied figure in his warehouse office, his knuckles split, and his eyes cold as winter ice. I pushed away the blankets and padded silently to the living room. The apartment was dark, except for the city lights filtering through the windows, casting everything in shades of silver and shadow. I should have been alone. Carter had his own penthouse after all. But some instinct made me pause in the hallway. He was there, standing at the window, just as he'd been hours earlier, still wearing the same clothes. A tumbler of whiskey sat on the side table, mostly full. He wasn't drinking it, just staring out at the city as though it held answers he desperately needed. "Can't sleep." His voice came without him turning around. Of course he'd known I was there. Carter always knew. Memories. I moved into the room, keeping the leather sofa between us. Of before. Good ones or bad ones? Both. I wrapped my arms around myself. That's the problem, isn't it? For every terrible memory, there's a good one. Our wedding night. The first time you felt the twins kick. The morning you brought me breakfast in bed because I was too sick with morning sickness to move. Now he turned, and the look on his face was raw in a way I'd rarely seen. And then there's the night you saw me beating Marcus Delgado half to death for selling information to the Giordano family. The night you realized the man you'd married was a monster. The blunt acknowledgement caught me off guard. You never talked about it. After, you acted like nothing had happened. What was I supposed to say, Clara? I'm sorry you saw that, but he deserved it. Don't worry. I only brutalize people who betray me. There was no explanation that would have erased what you witnessed. You could have told me the truth. About everything. About what you really did. What your business actually was. Instead of letting me believe you were just a businessman with questionable associates. Would you have married me if you'd known? The question hung between us. I wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that love would have been enough, but the truth was more complicated. I don't know, I admitted. My brother owed you $300,000. Money he'd gambled away trying to save our father's failing restaurant. You could have killed him. Should have according to the rules of your world. Instead, you offered him a deal. His debt forgiven in exchange for my hand in marriage. I thought it was archaic and terrifying, and somehow romantic. A modern fairy tale with a dark twist. It was never about the debt. Carter crossed the room, closing the distance between us until only the sofa remained as a barrier. The first time I saw you was at your father's restaurant, do you remember? You were serving tables, trying to smile through your exhaustion. Your brother brought you to that meeting because he thought seeing his sister would make me more sympathetic to his plea for more time. Instead, I took one look at you and decided I wanted you for myself. That's not romance, Carter. That's obsession. Perhaps. He didn't deny it. But I courted you properly, didn't I? Flowers every day for a month, dinners at the finest restaurants. I gave you time to know me before the wedding, made sure you understood you had a choice, some choice. Marry you or watch my brother die and my father's restaurant burn. I never threatened your father's restaurant. You didn't have to. The implication was clear. He was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I manipulated the situation to get what I wanted. I'm not proud of it, Clara, but I won't pretend I regret it either. Those 6 months we had before you ran, even with all the secrets between us, even with you not fully understanding my world, they were the best of my life. The confession made my chest ache. Then why didn't you change? If I made you so happy, why did you keep doing things that would inevitably drive me away? Because I didn't think you'd find out. His honesty was brutal. I kept that part of my life separate from you. Different building, different associates. You never should have been at that warehouse. But you'd found the address in my jacket pocket and thought it was a surprise I was planning. By the time I realized you were there, you'd already seen too much. I remembered that night with painful clarity. I'd been so excited, thinking I'd discovered Carter's secret, a new restaurant he was opening, or maybe an art gallery. The address had led me to an industrial area, to a nondescript building with no signs. I'd used the key code I'd memorized from watching him enter other buildings, so proud of myself for being clever. The sounds had reached me first, grunts of pain, the sickening thud of fists hitting flesh. Then I'd opened the office door and seen him. My husband, my Carter, standing over a man zip-tied to a chair, his face a mask of cold fury as he methodically, precisely, destroyed another human being. I'd run, made it to my car before the nausea overtook me. Drove home in a daze and spent the rest of the night vomiting and crying and trying to reconcile the man I loved with the monster I'd witnessed. I was 3 months pregnant, I said quietly. I'd planned to tell you that night. I was going to surprise you at what I thought was your new restaurant, announce it over champagne. Instead, I saw you nearly kill a man, and all I could think was, I can't raise a child in this world. I can't let my babies grow up thinking that's normal. Carter's eyes closed briefly, pain etching lines around his mouth. If I'd known... What? You would have stopped? Changed who you were overnight? Carter, you told me yourself that man deserved what happened to him. In your world, betrayal means blood. I couldn't accept that. I still can't. That world doesn't exist anymore. He moved around the sofa, and I didn't back away. After you left, after I finally found out you were pregnant, it took me 6 months to get that information from your old doctor. I realized I had a choice. I could keep being the man you ran from, or I could become someone worthy of you and our children. People don't change that fundamentally, Carter. Don't they? He was close enough now that I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the desperate need for me to believe him. 2 years ago, I controlled the drug trade in 3 states. I ran protection rackets, loan sharking operations, illegal gambling. I had politicians in my pocket and judges on my payroll. I was everything you feared. He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapping the screen before handing it to me. This is my current financial portfolio. Every business I own, every investment I control. Look at it, Clara. Really look. I took the phone, scrolling through pages of financial documents. Real estate holdings, legitimate investment firms, a chain of upscale restaurants and hotels, construction companies with city contracts and perfect safety records. Everything was documented, licensed, legal. The transition took 18 months, he continued. I sold off or shut down anything that wasn't clean. Some of my associates weren't happy about it. I lost allies, made new enemies. But I didn't care because none of it mattered if I couldn't have you. This could all be fake. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. The documentation was too thorough, too verifiable. It's not, and you know it. You're a smart woman, Clara. Smarter than I gave you credit for when we were married. If you want to verify every document, hire your own investigators. I'll give you the resources to do it. I'm not hiding anything from you anymore. I handed back the phone, my hand shaking. Why? Why go through all this? Because I love you. He said it simply, as though it explained everything. And perhaps it did, because I got a taste of what life could be with you. And I've spent every day since you left craving it like an addict craves his next fix. Because when I found out you were pregnant with my children, twins, my legacy, I realized I had a chance to build something real, a family, something that wasn't based on fear or power, but on choice and love. And if I can't give you that, if I can't get past what you were, his hand came up to cup my face, and I let myself lean into that familiar touch. Then I'll spend every day proving I've changed. I'll show you that the man you married, the one who brought you breakfast in bed and held you through morning sickness, is the real Carter Russo. The other one, the one you saw in that warehouse, he's dead. I killed him for you. Carter, I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Clara. Not yet. I'm asking for a chance. Let me prove to you that I'm someone our sons can be proud of. Let me show you that the life I'm offering is safe, legitimate, good. And at the end of it, if you still want to leave, I'll let you go. You said that before. 18 years. I'll put it in writing. A contract, legal and binding. You stay until the boys turn 18. Give me a chance to be their father, to prove I've changed. In return, you'll have everything you need: financial security, your own money, your freedom to work or study or do whatever you want. And when they're grown, if you want to leave, I'll sign divorce papers and let you walk away. It was a devil's bargain, and we both knew it. 18 years was a lifetime, long enough for feelings to change, for forgiveness to grow, for new bonds to form. He was betting that given enough time, I'd choose to stay on my own. I want conditions. I pulled back from his touch, needing distance to think clearly. If we're negotiating, I have terms. Name them. The boys never see violence, ever. If there are any remnants of your old life, any threats or complications, you keep them away from us. Agreed. I want my own money, not an allowance, not an account you control, my own funds that I can access freely. I'll set up a trust in your name, 10 million to start. The number made my head spin. That's too much. It's insurance, Clara. If you ever need to run, if something happens to me, you'll have the resources to disappear and keep our son safe. I won't trap you with financial dependence. The irony of him ensuring I could run from him wasn't lost on me. I want to work. Something meaningful, not just already arranged. A small smile played at his lips. I bought a struggling nonprofit yesterday. Literacy programs for underprivileged children. It's yours if you want it. Run it however you see fit. You bought a nonprofit? I bought you a purpose. Because I remember you used to talk about wanting to make a difference, wanting to do something that mattered. Consider it a wedding gift, 2 years late. God help me. I was starting to believe him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe so badly that I was willing to overlook the impossibility of what he was offering. One more condition, I said. We sleep in separate rooms. This isn't a real marriage anymore, Carter. It's a co-parenting arrangement. For the boys. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, hurt, but he nodded. If that's what you need, though I reserve the right to try to change your mind. Carter. Separate rooms, I agree. But Clara, I'm not giving up on us. I'll prove to you that what we had was real. That it can be real again. However long it takes. He was standing too close, looking at me with too much intensity, and I was suddenly, viscerally aware that despite everything, the fear, the anger, the betrayal, I still wanted him. My body remembered his touch, craved it in ways my mind refused to acknowledge. I should go back to bed. I stepped away before I did something foolish. The boys wake up early. Clara. My name stopped me at the hallway entrance. Thank you for giving me this chance. I won't waste it. I didn't respond, just fled to the safety of the guest room and locked the door behind me. My heart was racing, my hands shaking. I'd just agreed to spend the next 18 years bound to a man I'd run from, a man I'd thought was a monster. But as I climbed back into bed and pulled the covers up, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I'd made the right choice. Or at least, that's what I needed to believe to survive what came next. The transition happened so gradually, I almost didn't notice. 1 week became 2, then 3. The boys thrived at Ashwood Academy, coming home each day with stories about their friends and art projects, and the teacher who let them build blanket forts during reading time. I threw myself into running the literacy nonprofit, discovering I had a talent for fundraising and program development that surprised even me. And Carter. Carter kept his promises. He maintained his distance physically, never pushing for more than I was willing to give. But he was always there, attending the boys' school events, having dinner with us 3 nights a week, teaching Caleb and Cody to play chess with a patience I hadn't known he possessed. He'd transformed from the dangerous stranger who'd walked into my coffee shop into something more complicated. A devoted father, a respectful co-parent, and a man who looked at me with such longing it made my chest ache. It was almost enough to make me forget why I'd run in the first place. Almost. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing grant applications in my new office. A beautiful space in downtown Seattle, with a view of the market and the sound beyond. My personal cell phone, not the new one Carter had given me, rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Clara Mitchell? The voice was male, unfamiliar, with a rough quality that sent warning bells clanging in my mind. Who is this? Someone who knows you've been lying to a very dangerous man. Does Carter Russo know his precious wife spent 6 months in Portland before Seattle? Does he know about the waitressing job at Marco's Italian restaurant? Or the landlord you were sleeping with to keep your rent down? Ice flooded my veins. I'd been so careful covering my tracks from New York to Seattle, but there had been those 6 months in Portland first. A failed attempt at disappearing that had ended when I'd recognized one of Carter's associates at a grocery store and fled north. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. I have photos of you, Clara, from Portland. Very interesting photos. I wonder what Russo would pay to keep them from going public. Or maybe I should ask what you'd pay. My hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? $50,000. Cash. You have 3 days. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, as panic clawed at my throat. $50,000. I had access to far more than that in the trust Carter had established, but withdrawing that amount would trigger alerts, questions. And the photos. What had this man captured? My time in Portland had been desperate, lonely. I'd made choices I wasn't proud of to keep myself fed and housed while pregnant. I could tell Carter. Should tell Carter. But the thought of him learning about Portland, about the mistakes I'd made, filled me with shame so acute it made me nauseous. Instead, I called the one person who might understand. Jenna answered on the second ring. Clara, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Are you okay? That man who came to the coffee shop. I need help. I cut through her concern. Can we meet? Today? We arranged to meet at a small cafe near Pike Place Market, somewhere public and anonymous. I told my assistant I was leaving early for a dentist appointment and took a rideshare instead of using the driver Carter had assigned to me. Jenna was waiting at a corner table, her expression worried. She looked exactly the same. Purple streak in her hair, vintage band t-shirt, ripped jeans, a reminder of the simple life I'd briefly inhabited. What's going on? She grabbed my hands as soon as I sat down. That man, the one who came looking for you, he's all over the news. Carter Russo, some kind of business mogul. The articles say you're his wife, that you've been married for 3 years. Clara, what the hell? I told her everything. About my brother's debt, the arranged marriage, the pregnancy, what I'd witnessed in the warehouse. About running to Portland first. About the choices I'd made there that I couldn't take back. About Seattle and Brewhaven and how Carter had found me anyway. And now someone's blackmailing you? Jenna's eyes were wide. Clara, you have to tell your husband. He has resources. I can't. The words came out strangled. He can't know about Portland. He thinks I came straight to Seattle, that I've been here the whole 2 years. If he finds out I lied, that there's evidence of what I did to survive those first months. What exactly did you do? I couldn't meet her eyes. Things I'm not proud of. Nothing illegal, but compromising. The kind of photos that could be used to humiliate me, to make Carter question whether the twins are really his. Understanding dawned on Jenna's face. Oh, Clara. I need to borrow money. 50,000. I'll pay you back with interest. I just need time to figure out how to access it without Carter noticing. Stop. Jenna's voice was firm. You're not borrowing money from me because you don't need to. This is exactly the kind of situation you tell your husband about. If he's changed like you say, if he really cares about you, you don't understand what men like Carter are capable of when they feel betrayed. No, you don't understand what they're capable of when someone threatens their family. The words hung between us. Family. Was that what we were now? The boys certainly thought so. They'd started calling Carter Daddy just last week, the words slipping out naturally as he tucked them into bed. And I couldn't deny the way my heart had clenched at the joy on his face. Clara Mitchell. A new voice interrupted. I looked up to find 2 men in dark suits standing beside our table. Not Carter's men. I'd memorized the faces of his security team. These were strangers, and the way they positioned themselves, blocking our exit, sent alarms skittering down my spine. Who are you? Friends of the man who called you earlier. He wanted to make sure you understood the urgency of his request. The taller one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. 50,000. 3 days. Or those photos go to your husband, the press, and anyone else who might find them interesting. Jenna stood abruptly. You can't threaten people in public. Sit down. The command was quiet, but absolute. This doesn't concern you. Before I could think, could plan, could do anything but react, I pulled out my phone and called the number I'd been avoiding. Carter answered on the first ring. Clara, is everything... I'm at Cafe Umbria near the market. 2 men are here threatening me. I need you. My voice shook despite my attempt at control. Please. Don't move. Don't say anything. I'm 10 minutes away. He was there in 7. I heard the commotion before I saw him. The cafe door slamming open, chairs scraping, someone's startled gasp. Then Carter was there, flanked by 4 security personnel I recognized. His face a mask of cold fury that made the men at our table take an instinctive step back. Gentlemen. His voice was deadly calm. You made a mistake. A very, very serious mistake. The taller man recovered his composure quickly. Mr. Russo, this is just a business discussion. You threatened my wife. That's not business. That's suicide. What happened next was controlled and terrifying in its precision. Carter's security surrounded the 2 men while he pulled out his phone, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the other end. Within minutes, more men arrived. Not security, but people who moved with the quiet authority of those accustomed to cleaning up messes. Through it all, Carter never raised his voice, never resorted to violence. He didn't need to. The threat was implicit in every word, every gesture, every cold glance. Finally, he turned to me. We're leaving. Now. I followed him to the waiting car. Jenna forgotten behind me, still processing what had just happened. The ride to his penthouse was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Carter's hand rested on my knee, not possessive but grounding, as though reassuring himself I was really there. Once inside his apartment, he turned to me, and the mask cracked. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. And Clara," his voice softened, "don't lie to me. Not about this." So I did. I told him about Portland, about the 6 months I'd spent there, about the landlord who'd propositioned me and the photographs that might or might not exist. I told him about the choices I'd made when I was alone and pregnant and terrified, about the shame that had kept me silent. When I finished, he was quiet for so long I thought he might actually walk away. Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You should have told me," he murmured into my hair. "When I found you, when we made our arrangement, you should have trusted me with this. I was afraid." "Of what? That I'd judge you for doing what you had to do to survive? Clara, I've done things that would make your Portland choices look like Sunday school. I have no right to judge anyone, least of all you." The relief that flooded through me was so intense it made my knees weak. "What about the photos?" "Already handled. My people are tracking the source. By tomorrow, every copy will be destroyed, and the people who thought they could threaten you will understand exactly what happens when you come after a Russo. Carter, you promised no violence. And there won't be. Not the kind you're thinking of." He pulled back enough to look at me. "But there are other ways to destroy people, Clara. Legal ways. Financial ways. By tomorrow, whoever thought they could blackmail you will lose everything. Their jobs, their assets, their freedom. All perfectly legal, all completely devastating." I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt protected for the first time in 2 years. "The boys can never know about this," I said. "About Portland, about the blackmail. They won't. This ends tonight. But Clara," his hands framed my face, "no more secrets between us. If you're in trouble, you come to me. That's what marriage means, even if we're sleeping in separate rooms." The reminder of our arrangement sent heat flooding through me. We were standing too close, his touch too familiar, the adrenaline from the afternoon making everything feel heightened and intense. "I should go," I whispered. "Back to the apartment. The boys will be home soon." "Stay." His thumb traced my lower lip. "Have dinner with me. Just the two of us. Let me take care of you for one night." It was a terrible idea. But I was tired of being strong, tired of maintaining distance, tired of pretending my body didn't remember exactly how it felt to be claimed by this man. "Okay," I breathed. "One night." His smile was slow and devastating and full of promise. One night, I told myself. But I was beginning to suspect one night would never be enough. That one night turned into something I hadn't expected. Normalcy. We didn't fall into bed, despite the charged atmosphere and the way Carter looked at me throughout dinner. Instead, he cooked, actually cooked, moving around his state-of-the-art kitchen with surprising competence as he prepared pasta carbonara from scratch. We talked about mundane things. The boys' progress at school, a grant proposal I was working on, the restaurant he was opening next month that would employ previously incarcerated individuals. It felt like the early days of our marriage, before I'd understood what his world really entailed, before fear had eclipsed everything else. When he drove me home, to the apartment he'd arranged, in the building he owned, he walked me to the door and kissed my forehead with such tenderness it made my chest ache. "Thank you for trusting me today," he murmured. "I know it wasn't easy." Then he left, and I stood in the doorway wondering when the man I'd feared had become the man I was falling for all over again. 3 weeks later, I discovered exactly how much of Carter's old world still lingered in the shadows. I'd been invited to a charity gala, one of those glittering Seattle events where the city's elite gathered to write large checks and congratulate themselves on their generosity. The invitation had been addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Carter Russo, and when I'd mentioned it to Carter, his expression had grown carefully neutral, You don't have to go if you're not comfortable, he'd said. These events can be complicated. Because people know who you are, what you were. Because people know enough to be curious and not enough to be afraid. It makes them bold. I'd insisted on attending anyway, partly to prove I could handle his world, partly because the cause, childhood literacy, aligned perfectly with my nonprofit's mission. Carter had relented with obvious reluctance, making me promise to stay by his side the entire evening. The gala was held at the Four Seasons, in a ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers and enough flowers to stock a garden center. I wore a gown Carter had selected, midnight blue silk that hugged my curves and made my eyes look impossibly bright, and tried to ignore how every woman in the room tracked my husband with predatory interest. Because that's what he was now, I realized with a start. My husband. Not my ex, not my estranged spouse, but the man whose ring I still wore, whose children I'd borne, whose bed I was increasingly tempted to share. You're thinking very hard about something, Carter murmured, his hand warm at the small of my back as we navigated through the crowd. Should I be worried? Just noticing how many women here would happily take my place. His smile was sharp and pleased. Good. Let them notice what's mine. The possessiveness should have annoyed me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. We made it through the cocktail hour without incident. Carter introduced me to business associates and potential donors, his hand never leaving my waist, his attention never straying from me even when women far more beautiful tried to capture it. I found myself relaxing, actually enjoying the evening. Then I saw him. Marcus Delgado stood near the bar, a drink in hand, deep in conversation with a woman in red. The same Marcus Delgado I'd seen bleeding and broken in Carter's warehouse 2.5 years ago. The same man whose beating had sent me running into the night. He was alive, whole. Laughing at something his companion said, no visible scars, no lingering damage from the violence I'd witnessed. The room tilted. Carter felt me stiffen, followed my gaze, and cursed softly in Italian. Clara, you told me you nearly killed him. My voice came from very far away. That night, I saw what you did to him. You saw me teaching him a lesson. There's a difference. He looks fine. Better than fine. Carter's jaw tightened. Let's discuss this somewhere private. He guided me out onto the terrace, the cool Seattle night air hitting my overheated skin like a slap. Below us, the city sprawled in glittering lights, beautiful and indifferent to the crisis unfolding 30 stories above. You lied to me, I said, whirling to face him. You let me believe you were capable of murder when Marcus is in there. Perfectly healthy. Probably working for you. He works for my legitimate security firm now, yes. After I beat him severely enough to put him in the hospital for 3 days and make him reconsider his life choices. The blunt admission should have shocked me. Instead, I felt something else entirely. So you didn't almost kill him. No. And the blood, the violence I saw, was real, brutal, terrifying for you to witness. Carter stepped closer, his voice dropping. But Clara, that's the worst you ever saw of me. The absolute worst moment of my old life, and even then, I showed restraint. I wanted Marcus to suffer, to understand the consequences of betrayal. But I didn't want him dead. I wanted him to live with the lesson. I thought about that night, about the assumptions I'd made. I thought you were a monster. I was. In many ways, I still am. But even at my worst, I wasn't the man you imagined. The one who killed without conscience, who enjoyed inflicting pain. That was never me, Clara. Then why didn't you tell me? Why let me run? Let me believe? Because by the time I understood why you'd left, you were already gone. And when I finally found you, you were so certain of what I was, that contradicting it seemed pointless. I thought showing you would be more effective than telling you. He was right, I realized with a jolt. If he'd tracked me down and immediately insisted he wasn't as bad as I thought, I never would have believed him. But these past weeks of watching him with our sons, of seeing the legitimate empire he'd built, of witnessing his patience and tenderness, those had accomplished what words never could. I'm an idiot, I whispered. No. You were a terrified pregnant woman protecting her children. There's nothing idiotic about that. He reached for me, then hesitated. Can I hold you? Please? I went into his arms, letting him pull me against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. His heartbeat was steady beneath my ear, strong and certain. I wasted 2 years, I said into his shirt. 2 years of our sons growing up without their father. 2 years of us being apart when we could have. We needed those 2 years. His hand stroked through my hair. I needed them to become someone worthy of you, and you needed them to become someone strong enough to stand beside me. Us, now. We couldn't have had this version if we hadn't been broken first. That's very philosophical for a former mobster. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. I have layers, Mrs. Russo. Mrs. Russo. The name settled over me like coming home. We should go back inside, I said, not moving. We should. Neither of us moved. Finally, Carter pulled back just enough to look at me. Clara, I need to tell you something. The blackmail attempt last month. We traced it back to someone connected to my old organization, the Giordano family specifically. They're not happy about my exit from certain business ventures, and they thought threatening you would be an effective way to draw me back in. Dread coiled in my stomach. And I've handled it. Legally, thoroughly, permanently. But it made me realize that even though I've gone legitimate, echoes of my past will always exist. People who knew what I was, who might try to use that knowledge against us, against our family. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you're going to be my wife, really my wife, not just on paper, you need to understand all of it. The empire I built, how I built it, the connections that still exist even though the illegal operations don't. No more secrets, Clara. Not from me, and not from you. The trust implicit in his words took my breath away. You want to tell me everything? I want you to know exactly who you're choosing when you choose me. Because I am choosing you, Clara. Every day. And I need to know you're choosing me too, with full knowledge of what that means. I thought about the past weeks, about watching him be a father to our sons, about the way he'd protected me from the blackmailers, about the tenderness and patience and unwavering commitment he'd shown. Tomorrow, I said. Tell me everything tomorrow. But tonight, I looked up at him, seeing my desire reflected in his eyes. Tonight, I don't want to think about the past or worry about the future. Tonight, I just want you. His eyes darkened. Clara, if we do this, if we cross that line again, I'm not letting you go back to the guest room. I'm not pretending we're just co-parents. You understand that? Yes. You're sure? Because once I have you again, once I make you mine in every way that matters, that's it. No more separate rooms, no more distance. You're mine, and I'm yours, and everyone will know it. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed me. Instead, it made desire spike through me so sharply I swayed. Take me home, I whispered. To your home, our home, and show me exactly what being yours means. His smile was predatory and beautiful and full of promise. With pleasure, Bellissima. With absolute pleasure. We left the gala without saying goodbye to anyone. Carter's hand possessive on my waist as he guided me to the waiting car. The ride to his penthouse was silent, but electric, tension crackling between us with such intensity I could barely breathe. When we finally reached his apartment, he didn't rush. Instead, he poured us each a glass of wine, led me to the window overlooking the city, and began to talk. He told me everything. About his father's organization, about inheriting an empire built on fear at age 25 when a rival family's attack had left him orphaned, about the choices he'd made, the things he'd done to survive and then to thrive, about the gradual realization that power built on violence was inherently unstable and the 2-year process of dismantling it all. "The man you saw in that warehouse," he said, staring out at the glittering city, "he was real. He existed. But he was never the whole of who I am, and he's not who I want to be anymore. For you, for our sons, I became someone better." I set down my wine glass and moved to stand before him. "I don't need you to be perfect, Carter. I just need you to be honest, and to love our children. I love them more than I thought it was possible to love anything." His hands came up to frame my face. "And I love you. I've loved you since the moment your brother brought you to that meeting, trying to trade your freedom for his debt. And you looked at me with terror and defiance in equal measure." "Show me," I breathed. "Show me how much." He did. This time, when Carter claimed me, it wasn't desperate or rushed. It was a reclaiming, a renewal of vows spoken 3 years ago and forgotten in the chaos of fear and flight. It was a promise written in touch and breath, and the exquisite pleasure of 2 people who knew each other's bodies like familiar territory finally coming home. Afterward, wrapped in his arms in his bed, our bed now, I realized I'd made my choice. Not out of fear or obligation or even for the boys, but because somewhere in the past weeks, the man I'd run from had become the man I couldn't imagine living without. And this time, I wasn't running anywhere. 3 months after I moved into Carter's penthouse, 3 months of falling asleep in his arms and waking to his kisses, 3 months of watching him be the father our sons deserved, the past came for us with a vengeance. It started with small things. A black SUV that appeared too often outside the boys' school, a delivery man who asked too many questions about our schedule, security camera footage showing someone tampering with the lock on our building's service entrance. Carter noticed first. Of course he did. The instincts honed by years of living in a dangerous world didn't just disappear because he'd gone legitimate. "We need to talk," he said one evening after the boys were asleep. His voice was calm, controlled, but I'd learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened when he was preparing for a fight. I followed him to his office, the one room in the penthouse he kept locked, the one space I'd respected his privacy enough not to enter without invitation. Tonight, he opened the door wide, a silent acknowledgement that there were no more secrets between us. The screens on his desk showed surveillance footage from multiple angles: our building, the boys' school, the nonprofit office where I worked 3 days a week. Red circles marked the same figure appearing again and again, a man in his 40s, unremarkable in appearance, but his presence in too many places was anything but coincidental. "His name is Vincent Giordano," Carter said, pulling up a file on his computer. "Younger brother of the head of the Giordano family. The same family that attempted to blackmail you 3 months ago." My blood ran cold. "I thought you handled that situation." "I handled the immediate threat. Bankrupted the men involved, had them arrested on charges that will keep them in prison for the next decade. But apparently, Vincent took it personally. He's been watching us, learning our patterns." "What does he want?" Carter was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the desk in a rhythm that betrayed his agitation. "Revenge. When I left the organization, I took with me information that could destroy several families, including the Giordanos. I've kept it as insurance, made it clear that if anything happened to me or mine, everything would be released to federal prosecutors. It's kept an uneasy peace for 2 years. And now Vincent's breaking that peace? He thinks he's found a weakness. You, the boys. Carter's voice hardened. He's planning something, Clara. My people have intercepted communications suggesting an abduction attempt. He wants to take one of our sons, use them as leverage to get the information back and destroy me in the process. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to breathe through the panic clawing at my throat. When? We don't know exactly. Soon. Within the next week, based on the pattern of surveillance. We need to leave. Take the boys somewhere safe, somewhere he can't find us. Running doesn't solve this, Clara. It only delays it. He stood, moving around the desk to pull me into his arms. Vincent won't stop. Even if we disappeared tomorrow, he'd keep searching, and eventually, he'd find us. The only way to truly protect our family is to eliminate the threat permanently. The word eliminate hung between us, weighted with implications I didn't want to examine. You promised, I whispered against his chest. No violence. You promised the boys would never see that part of your world. And they won't. This is why I'm telling you now, why I'm giving you a choice. He pulled back enough to look at me, his ice blue eyes intense. I can handle this the old way. Quick, final, permanent. Vincent disappears, and the threat dies with him. Or I can handle it the new way. Legally, through channels, which takes time and leaves us vulnerable while the system works. But Clara, if I do it the legal way and something happens to one of our sons while we're waiting for justice... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I thought about Caleb and Cody, asleep in their room down the hall, dreaming innocent dreams of dinosaurs and superheroes. I thought about the life we'd built, the family we'd become. I thought about the man Carter had transformed into, and the man he'd been before. Do whatever you need to do, I said, the words coming from somewhere deep and primal. Protect our children. I don't care how. Something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with something darker. You understand what you're asking me to do? I understand I'm asking you to be the monster you used to be so our sons can grow up safe. I understand I'm choosing their lives over someone else's. And Carter. I gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. I understand that you're doing this because I'm asking, and that makes me complicit. I accept that. He kissed me then, hard and desperate, and full of a complicated emotion I couldn't name. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. I love you, he breathed. God, Clara, I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too, so protect us. Protect our babies. And then come home to me. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. Carter disappeared into whatever shadowy network still existed from his old life, taking with him the cold determination that had once frightened me, but now felt like salvation. Security around us tripled. Armed men I didn't recognize stationed at every entrance to our building. Plainclothes guards shadowing my every move. The boys' school practically under siege. I tried to maintain normalcy for Caleb and Cody, reading bedtime stories and helping with homework, and pretending the world wasn't potentially ending. But inside, I was counting down minutes, waiting for news, terrified of what that news might be. It came on the third day. Carter walked into the penthouse at noon, looking exhausted but whole. No blood on his clothes, no visible injuries, just the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd done something terrible for all the right reasons. Is it over? I asked from where I sat on the sofa, having abandoned all pretense of working. It's over. Vincent Giordano was arrested this morning by federal agents on charges of racketeering, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and about a dozen other crimes that will keep him in prison for the rest of his life. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, intercepted communications, testimony from associates who decided cooperation was preferable to prosecution. You didn't kill him? No. Carter sat beside me, pulling me into his arms. I wanted to. God, Clara, I wanted to so badly. But I promised you no violence, and I kept that promise. Instead, I did what I've been doing for 2 years. I used the law as a weapon. Every piece of information I had on Vincent and his organization, I handed it to prosecutors on a silver platter. He'll never see daylight again. Relief flooded through me so intensely I started shaking. Carter held me tighter, his hand stroking through my hair. You kept your promise, I whispered. You protected us without becoming the monster. I'll always keep my promises to you. Always. We sat there for a long time, wrapped in each other, letting the reality of safety sink in. Finally, I pulled back enough to look at him. I want to renew our vows. He blinked, clearly surprised. What? Our wedding. It was beautiful, but it was built on fear and obligation and my brother's debt. I want to marry you again, Carter. This time as a choice. This time because I love you and choose you and want to spend the rest of my life with you. The joy that transformed his face was almost painful to witness. You mean that? I mean it. I want our sons to see us exchange vows freely. I want to wear white and walk toward you, knowing exactly who you are and choosing you anyway. I want to start fresh, build something real. Yes. He kissed me, deep and claiming. Yes, Bellissima. Whatever you want, whenever you want it. I'll marry you 1,000 times if that's what it takes to prove I'm yours. We renewed our vows 6 weeks later in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Seattle. Just family and close friends, Antonio and Gabriella flew in from New York, along with a few others from Carter's legitimate business world. Jenna stood as my maid of honor, still slightly terrified of Carter, but supportive of my choice. Caleb and Cody were our ring bearers, proudly carrying the new platinum bands we'd selected together. They didn't fully understand what was happening, just that Mommy and Daddy were getting married, and that meant we were a forever family. When I walked down the aisle between the rows of grapevines, wearing a simple cream dress and carrying wildflowers, Carter's eyes filled with tears. He took my hands when I reached him, and we spoke vows we'd written ourselves. Clara, he said, his voice rough with emotion. 3 years ago, you became my wife out of obligation. Today, you choose me freely, and that gift is worth more than anything I've ever possessed. I promise to be worthy of that choice every day. I promise to love you, protect you, and cherish you. I promise to be the father our sons deserve and the husband you need. I promise that my past will never touch our future again. I squeezed his hands, tears streaming down my face. Carter, I ran from you once because I was afraid of who you were. But you've shown me that people can change, that love can transform even the darkest corners of the soul. I promise to stand beside you, to trust in your love, to build a family and a life with you that honors both of us. I promise to never run again, because anywhere without you isn't home. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, again, Carter kissed me like I was air, and he'd been drowning. Our sons cheered, and somewhere in the distance, I heard Jenna crying happy tears. This was our real beginning. Everything before had been prologue. 1 year later, I woke to Carter's hand resting on my very pregnant belly, feeling the strong kicks of the daughter we'd learned we were expecting 6 months ago. She's active this morning, he murmured, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. She takes after her brothers. I covered his hand with mine, marveling at how much life could change. The boys were thriving. Caleb had discovered a love for music, Cody for art. The nonprofit was expanding to 3 new cities, and Carter had officially been named Seattle's Business Person of the Year for his work employing and training formerly incarcerated individuals. We'd done it. Built something real and good from the ruins of what we'd been. "Have you decided on a name?" Carter asked, his hand making gentle circles on my belly. "Celeste," I said. "It means heavenly, because that's what this feels like. Heaven. You, me, the boys, this baby girl, our family. Celeste Russo." He tested the name, then smiled. "Perfect. She'll be perfect, just like her mother." "I'm not perfect, Carter. You are to me." He kissed me, soft and sweet. "You're everything, Clara. My redemption, my salvation, my home. I was lost before you, and I'd be lost without you. Good thing you'll never have to find out. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. Forever." 3 weeks later, Celeste Rose Russo entered the world at precisely 3:33 in the morning, screaming her displeasure at the cold and the light. She had Carter's dark hair and my blue eyes, and when he held her for the first time, tears streaming down his face, I knew we'd finally, truly, completely healed. The past didn't disappear. Carter's history would always be part of our story, just as my flight and the years of separation would always color our relationship. But we'd learned that the past didn't have to define the future, that people could change, that love could be both fierce and gentle, protective and freeing, that sometimes the person you run from becomes the person you can't live without. Caleb and Cody met their sister that afternoon, staring at her tiny face with wonder. "She's so small," Caleb whispered. "We'll protect her," Cody declared with all the certainty of a 5-year-old. "Like Daddy protects us." Carter pulled me close, our sons clustered around us, our daughter sleeping peacefully in my arms. "Like we all protect each other," he said. "That's what family means." And looking at my husband, my choice, my love, my forever, I finally understood what home really meant. Not a place, but the people who would fight for you, change for you, become better because of you. Home was here, in Carter's arms, surrounded by our children, building a future brighter than any past we'd left behind. And I was never, ever running again.